into the Deuce and Mo podcast, an emergency podcast edition. It's very much an emergency podcast if we are recording this on a Friday night at 10:25 p.m. Pacific time.
It's 10:25?
We were sitting at Jungle Bird in downtown Sacramento when I saw an alert from my phone, Adrian Wojanorwski saying, Mike Brown, the Kings have agreed to a new deal.
I thought it was just going to be smoke again. That's what I was waiting for. Just
Yeah.
a little leverage, a little nugget here or there.
Well, let's go through it. Larry.
Oh,
the
please.
first headline is this.
Okay.
Mike Brown has a new deal with the Sacramento Kings.
Yay!
Turn the fucking Jets on! Turn the fucking Jets on!
That's the good news.
Yeah.
Let's take a little rewind, though. At the end of the season, we found out Mike Brown, this is according to Anthony Slater and Sam Amick from The Athletic, reported that Mike Brown had this mutual option for the final year of his 4-year deal. But he was looking to get a raise because he's seen what other coaches around the league are making. Coaches' salaries have spiked dramatically. So we went, oh, man, if he's ripping up that mutual option, that means this upcoming season would be the final year of his deal, and he wants a new deal. Mm-hmm. So there was something that we were thinking about headed into the offseason. Then last Friday, we found out from Adrian Wojanorwski that the Kings and Mike Brown had discussions, but there's a large gulf.
Oh, yes, the golf.
The golf, it's huge. And they have table talks. They're tabled them. Then last night, right before the tip-off of Game 5 of the Mavs and the Wolves, Shams Charania reports that, hey, man, Kings are offering 3 years, $21 million with incentives that could get it to 27. It's a competitive offer, but they don't have an agreement. So far, no deal. And then tonight, we find out that the Kings have extended Mike Brown through the 26-27 season. A couple of different numbers have been put out there, but according to Adrian Wojanorwski, Mike Brown's getting a $4.5 million raise this year.
Yeah. Then
he makes $8.5 next season, and then $8.5 in the final year of his deal in the 26-27 year. Now, Shams Charania did report it's a 3-year, $30 million extension. The point being is, sounds like base level salary. He's making $8.5 million per year with incentives that would get him to like 10-ish, maybe 11.
Yeah. Great. I mean, this is exactly what you and I had discussed even when the first rumblings came out. And it was, this is what he's kind of looking for. And it's like, yeah, this is what it's going to land upon. I think we even said this the other night when the latest tweet came out from Shams. And I mean, you got to be happy with it. Here's the thing. Of course, you're going to be happy with it. You're getting millions upon millions more. Yes, we understand that. Absolutely. Stating the obvious. But I think as a Kings fan, you should be happy about it because it just means a little bit more stability, consistency. And then if you are a player on this roster, it means, hey, we also get that continuity. We also get to learn and grow and develop under this same coach in this system.
Yeah, it's significant for Mike Brown to get an extension. And I think he deserved it. And you look at what other coaches are making right now. So give this guy a little raise a little bit. And it doesn't really hamstring you because we talk about a 3-year extension. It's technically only one more year added on to his previous 4-year agreement.
Right.
So it's not like you're extending it way out to the future. And if you really take a deep dive, it matches up with the expiration of Domantas Sabonis' contract in the 26-27 season. De'Aaron Fox's deal actually expires in the 25-26 season, the year before that.
Okay.
So obviously there's a lot of different things to look at. But look, Mike Brown's deal matches up with that core group where you go, okay, what's that look like toward the end of that? And it allows the Kings some flexibility and make some decisions down the road. But it also, hey, you commit to this guy who has helped you become a respectable franchise again. You have never had winning like this besides Rick Adelman.
There you go.
I mean,
and that's the fact that we always have to go back to that.
That's like Woj had it in his piece today. He's like, it's only the second time in Kings history that a coach has had winning seasons in his first 2 seasons as head coach. The only other person was Rick Adelman, 98 through 2000.
So I think if you first look at, like you were saying, how it lines up with Domas Sabonis and his contract, and that obviously being intentional, because when you look at this whole thing and you look at everything as a whole, as I just repeated myself saying,
I like that.
Thank you. When you look at everything as a whole, you want to, I think, as an organization, commit to what you believe can grow together, right? And what you believe has a timeline together. And if you don't get shit done in that time together, well, something's got to go.
Right.
Whether it's a trade, whether it's a firing of a coach, whether it's something like that, is when you can make that decision. But I'm just so sick of being in Sacramento and over so many years seeing losing basketball, but then never seeing consistency, because, I mean, it wasn't always the wrong decision to obviously fire some of these coaches and go in a different direction. But there was also some, Michael Malone, where it felt like, oh no, you could have continued along this journey. And that's why I like that they're showing commitment there and being like, hey, we believe in this. We're going to go in this direction.
If you go back to the report from last night from Shams, it said the Kings are pretty much offering $7 million a year base salary, and that Mike Brown wanted 10.
Yes.
Well, look, there is some middle ground. It's something we talked about last night when we reacted to it. It's like, yeah, could you get him $8-9 million with some bonuses that could get him to 10? That's exactly what happened, and it's clear the two sides wanted to work something out. It was interesting to see how this was being talked about, and I understand it from a Kings fan's perspective. Like, we're watching it, and there's a little bit of us being on edge about it too, because it's like, wait, is this going to get messed up? Are we going to have to stress about this? I'm glad they got this done within a week of all this news coming out about it.
Well, you mentioned this the other night when we were talking about Shams' tweet coming out, and you're like, look, when it came to Ty Lue, Shams tweeted out something about Ty Lue and the Clippers, and that
they weren't close.
They weren't close with the deal. 1 week later, they had come up with a deal. This happens to be, 48 hours later, however many hours it ended up being later. And I think on top of all that, though, Deuce, within this time, you and I are like, we're not naive to it. And I think a lot of people out there aren't naive to this, that these are negotiating tactics within the NBA. This isn't what you're going to do with your boss at your everyday job. This is not what I'm going to do with my boss at my everyday job.
I will say, I'll push back on that a little bit.
You think I'm going to call Woj and say, yo, NBC, I want this shit. I want this money.
Okay, I'm not talking about leaking out that information. I'm talking about the negotiation. I think it was so funny. Like, people are like, hey, he's asking for 10. Just give him 10. I'm like, in what world do we live in where you go to your boss and be like, hey, man, I want 10 million. And he or she goes, okay, here's 10 million.
Right.
It's like, no, there's like some middle ground. They're gonna lowball you. Then you're gonna go. There's some middle ground. It's a negotiation.
And I'm more just talking about the strategy of obviously reaching out to the public. And I think that has been triggering for so many years when it comes to this market, because a lot of times it just gets messy. But with this, I think it's become the new day and age of how you strategize with your negotiations as a coach, as a player, as whoever the hell. And even if you wanted to stay in house, it ain't going to stay in house anymore. That's just how life goes. And especially when millions are involved. And so I know a lot of people were getting frustrated about that. I think even for me, it was triggering for me at first. And then I realized, like, oh no, this is just the new day and age of how people do things.
I just realized I messed something up too.
What'd you
mess up? So I'm going
up?
to edit this into the real version of the audio podcast.
What'd you mess up?
So, and shout out to Ben for mentioning this.
Oh, thank God.
Sabonis' deal actually goes into the 27-28 season, not the 26-27
You
season.
checked this 3 times
I know.
at Jungle
I probably
Bird,
didn't scroll
and you're
all the
like,
way.
if I'm not mistaken, and he said 7 times, if I'm not mistaken, and guess what I said? I said, don't be mistaken. Don't be mistaken.
Can you not hit the desk, please?
Sorry. My whole thing is because there's been so many podcasts, not so many. There have been a few podcasts where you and I have gone back and you're like, oh, I fucked up this, or I screwed up this number. And I'm like, yo, that's on you.
So how do you want to handle this? Because I was trying to like, hey, let's edit it. Now we're just going to leave it in?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll just leave it in. So Mike Brown's deal, technically, it goes through the 26-27 season. De'Aaron Fox's deal expires 25-26. Sabonis actually goes to the 27-28 season.
Okay.
Nonetheless, they're pretty much matched up with each other.
Yeah.
Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say.
That's fair to say.
Yes,
But shout out to our guy, Ben.
Thanks, Ben.
Always active. One of the OGs in the chat letting us know about that. Yeah, I think, too, I'm curious why this had to be so public within the last week. Like, is that what needed to happen to get this over the finish line? Why did it have to be out there? Because you see other organizations, like when Jason Kidd agrees to a deal, it just gets agreed upon, it gets announced, right?
But he's also making the NBA Finals. And I think...
But that's fine.
Okay,
But
okay.
that deal wasn't agreed to yesterday. It was agreed to earlier this month.
Fair.
My point is, like, some of these extensions you hear about, it just gets announced like, oh, this team and this coach agreed to a new deal. You don't hear about, hey, he wants this. Oh, they want this. I want that. It's not so public. I am curious why it needed to be so public. And I think that's probably what gave a lot of people pause going, wait, is this going to be okay? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I get that, but I also think with this organization that has also experienced so much losing over the years, so much drama over the years, that they're finally it's like being in a relationship after being in so many toxic relationships, and you're finally in this good relationship, and it's hard for you to commit because you're like, is this real? Are they just gonna cheat on me again? Are they gonna screw me over? And it's like, no, sweetie, like, believe it, commit, pay the man, just like that.
I'm glad they paid the man.
Me too. I'm super happy on this Friday night because of it.
What do you think is Mike Brown's biggest challenge going forward?
Well, when you look at De'Aaron Fox and Domas Sabonis and their contracts not necessarily lined up to the exact year of when Mike Brown's contract ends up. But I think when you look at the bigger picture of everything and you go, okay, we're committing to you and what you can do with these pieces in those times, right? Like, how many times this season are we talking about roster construction and that you have to have the right pieces around Domas and De'Aaron and all these things? Like, you're not going to run it back this next year. Like, that's what you did last year. And it got you 46 wins in the Western Conference. That was so difficult. But at the same time, like, there was just so many different things that happened, and not just because of health, that you're questioning, okay, like, there needs to be tweaks, there need to be changes. But I think when you look at this with Mike Brown, like, some of his biggest challenges are, you got these pieces, you got to work with what you have at times. And so, like, he's just got to make the most out of even whatever he's given on this roster, even if there are tweaks and changes going into this next season.
And I think he has. I mean, I was thinking about this today. His first year, they were 24th in defensive rating. This year, they jumped to 14th.
Yeah.
They were 9th after the All-Star break.
Yeah.
It's not like they had a dramatic amount of changes. The big change was, Keon Ellis was a factor. They put him in the starting lineup. De'Aaron Fox took a step. Keegan's ability to defend. And they were able to become, after the All-Star break, 9th in defense without, like, acquiring some all-defensive talent.
Or rim protector.
Right. So they were able to do that.
Yeah.
So now... Yeah, I think it's just building upon what they've done. This wasn't meant to be, in my opinion, it shouldn't have been like such a big deal.
Yeah.
And it became a big deal because it was out there. The reality is, I think Mike Brown's done enough. Does it mean he's accomplished everything that he needs to accomplish? Does it mean he's a perfect head coach? Does it mean his rotations are perfect and he makes every right decision? No. But the reality is, he has brought a level of respectability back to this organization. He had talked about when he first got the job, every good organization has a soul. I think we got a little bit of a soul back.
Mm-hmm.
The players dig him.
Well,
he holds guys accountable.
Yes.
And the guy's 48 wins the first year?
Yep.
46 the next year? We haven't seen that in years. Now, I'm not saying be satisfied with that, but I think he is the right coach for this time.
Agreed.
Of the Sacramento Kings.
What did you ask me the other night? You said what is the alternative? That question alone got me like, whoa, you are so right. I think everyone always thinks like the grass is always greener. I mean, you look at the Bucks going like, well, we got to hire Doc Rivers. Like, and not to say that things didn't get better after Doc Rivers came along. Like, you could say there was certain things that got better, but those weren't the expectations of what was supposed to happen with those star players. And that's not the only case. My whole point is, I think sometimes people just think they automatically go to change is going to make things better. And I'm sorry, they think firing someone is going to make something better, when sometimes you just have to have a feel of what type of people you actually have around this organization. And I think with Mike Brown, you have a basketball mind. You have someone that understands the game, players, the league, how to work with like talking with the media, how to work with just being personable with people within your organization. Like, he gets all those things, and all those things are very important as a head coach in the NBA.
And it's clear, if you read James Ham's story a couple weeks back when he was talking about the Mike Brown situation, and then he said that, ownership was not happy with the result of the season. There's some pressure on Mike Brown. There's pressure on Monty McNair in the front office and the players to get back to the playoffs now and make some noise. Like, a one and done thing is not good enough. Like, ending the streak that was great in that moment, but you have to build upon that. So ultimately, I'm glad they got this done now, because we were talking about this last night, Morgan. It's like, you don't want this kind of hanging over you as you approach the draft and free agency. You're going to sit down with Monk at some point and talk about a deal. And if he's looking at you going, well, what's going on with Mike Brown? It's done now. Like, you're all lined up. You got the deal
Stability.
done. Everyone should be happy.
Yep.
Like, Mike Brown got a fat raise, a big raise.
Yeah.
And it's of market value. He got rewarded. The Kings are obviously showing some level of faith if they're ponying up that deal, right?
Yep.
So I think it's a win for everybody now. And now it's up to the front office to get busy and figure out what moves they need to make to get this team back into the playoffs and winning a playoff series in a Western Conference that's only going to get tougher.
That's it. It's not about looking at it's something else you and I never talked about during this postseason of watching all these other teams. And when you look at a lot of these teams that committed a lot of money into these players, into these rosters to basically be a finals and I guess a contending team, right? There's a lot of teams that wasted money, took risks, risked their entire futures. I mean, you look at the Phoenix Suns, you look at the mess that happened with just firing Frank Vogel, blaming it all on him. But you look at the roster, and something you and I kept talking about and we hadn't gone on and talked about was for the Sacramento Kings, we kind of took a step back and we're like, really glad that the future wasn't just thrown away for the Sacramento Kings. Not to say that that it was okay that no tweaks were made, that no moves were made. But it's like, scared money don't make no money. Like, you got to make sure you are taking risks, that you are taking calculated risks, and making sure that you are giving this team a future that they can depend on. And I know that's hard to balance. It's like, okay, so do you just pay some name player, whatever, to be your third guy to try and push deep into the postseason, but then not have a future because you're paying this guy this much money?
Sure.
It's just, there's a lot that goes into it. I think sometimes, like, I just take a step back and I'm like, ooh, I'm so glad that they have so much flexibility still.
Yeah, and there's teams, I mean, even after Minnesota gets eliminated, the talk today is like, look, man, you've got Ant getting a big raise. Cat has a ton of money coming his way. Same with Gobert. They're top 6 guys getting paid, with McDaniels getting a raise, and of course Conley's deal, Naz Reid. You add all that up, they're already like a second apron team. Like, So they're in like a tough spot. Now, they should be good, but they may have some tough decisions to make going forward, right? And so at least the Kings at this point, and this is the challenge going forward in team building in the NBA is, initially you just had a luxury tax that meant, hey, if you went over that threshold, well, your owner's got to pony up and pay a lot of money. Yeah. But now there's so many additional penalties if you get past that first one and then go to the second apron where you're limited. We're talking with picks. There's punishments there. There's punishments with some of the deals that you could put out there, some of the trades you can make. So you have to stay nimble a little bit. And it's a fine line to walk as an organization is picking the right time to go, all right, this is the time to make the big swing and go into the second apron because this move will propel us to championship contention.
Because moves will make a difference. Moves will make Mike Brown better. Moves will make De'Aaron Fox better. Domas Sabonis better. I get all that. You got to make moves. They just, it's in this small market. You are just like, you are walking a fine line and you just got to do it right. And that's why that's all I'm saying with this last year. I'm not justifying the no moves, 46 wins, blah, 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 blah. I'm just saying, looking at some of the other teams and their futures, I'm like, I get it. But now it's time to make some moves.
Well, the Kings get it done. Mike Brown and the Kings agreed to a new 3-year deal. Mike Brown gets a raise, $4.5 million next season. The season after that, $8.5 million. And the final year will be the 26-27 season, $8.5 million. Probably some bonuses up there if they have some postseason success that will get him to that $10 million threshold.
Gotta get to that 10.
The Kings get it done. Let us know what you think about the new deal with Mike Brown, the Sacramento Kings. Do you feel good about it? Does it make you feel a little better as a Kings fan? What's next up on your wish list? Let us know in the comments below. Hit the thumbs up and subscribe.
Deuce and Mo. Deuce and Mo. Deuce and Mo. They tell you what they know. Deuce and Mo. Deuce and Mo. Deuce and Mo. The